I believe it's critically important that we have substantial millennium goals. I propose a 21st century Marshall Fund to deal with poverty with the developing world. You can't just talk rhetoric. Here are my specifics. I would double the amount of foreign assistance we provide to the developing world. It would be 2% of our budget, a total of $56 billion. Today it's about $22, $23 billion. What I want to do is have a recognition that American foreign policy interests are served by building international support for our goals, but especially with the nations of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, the third world, that is neglected in the power structures. What am I talking about? I'm talking about a full-scale attack on global poverty and global diseases. I'm talking about AIDS, malaria, rickets. I'm talking about doing something about the plight of refugees around the world. I'm talking about making an all-out effort to fight AIDS and HIV and finding ways that we collaborate with the private sector to deal with vaccine shortages around the world. Human needs. If we're able to associate ourselves with nations around the world that have serious poverty problems, that deal with primary health care, that deal with education, over a third of the world doesn't have access to schooling, and 60% of those are young girls. It is critically important that we find ways to fund primary education programs around the world, that we also be an America that recognizes that most human beings have never even seen a cell phone, much less used it, that a big proportion of the world lives under very serious poverty standards, that we have malnutrition problems, that we engage not just in providing more resources, but that America lead. Entrepreneurship is very important to me. Building middle classes in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. In the Arab world, I believe one of our biggest priorities is to try to build an Arab middle class, to have an Islamic world that understands us better. What I also want to see is microlending. You know, the winner of the Nobel Prize 2 years ago was Muhammad Yunus. He provided a $50 loan to a woman to build a dress shop. From that, new jobs came up. From that, the loan was paid off. And a whole assortment of entrepreneurial initiatives happened because of that loan. That's the kind of program that I want to see America affiliated with. That's the kind of effort we should have internationally. We should shift our international institutions, the World Bank and many other institutions like the IMF, away from debt to grants, away from loans to grants. I want to commend Bono and the One Campaign for their efforts to make sure that presidential candidates don't forget about Africa, and they don't forget about making sure that we commit our millennium goals to deal with poverty and disease and malnutrition around the world.